Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
And welcome back, everybody. It's finally, I think so, Friday here on the Catholic Convert Show. And as usual, I'm over here enjoying the glorious weather down here in Northwest and South Carolina, while Ed is still trapped in, I guess that you could call it a hostage situation there in Jersey. He claims that he likes it, but I really don't believe he does.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's all made up. We want the world to think that New Jersey is Newark and Camden and smokestacks and oil refineries and all that nonsense. Meanwhile, all of us cool dudes are hanging out in South Jersey down in the Pine Barrens with the Pineys and listening to bluegrass music and roping them doggies and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's all a ruse. It's like a reverse what do you call when the local town councils will put out all sorts of cool information so that you get tourism coming. We do it in reverse here. This everyone stays away, and I'm cool with that. So I'm just
the Stockholm syndrome is in full force. I see.
Is that what they've dispelled that recently? They're saying that there's really no Stockholm syndrome. People who turn to be kind of cool and hip with their captives were actually bad people to begin with. I'm just telling you what the details say, what the studies are telling us. But no, man, it's beautiful. I'm telling you, everything that's wonderful in this world, it came from New Jersey. I mean, you think Frank Sinatra, pizza, cranberry juice, grape juice, air conditioning, domestic beer. It all started here in New Jersey. The very
first,
like
two things that are great. The rest are I could do without.
The very first distillery in the United States, and they're still there now, is in Colts Neck, New Jersey. They opened in like 1760 something, and it was a guy who made. No, it's not a brewery, but a distillery. They make
a distillery.
Yeah, they make that stuff Applejack. Because some dude.
Oh, okay.
He was like a whiskey maker back in Ireland, came here, and the property he owned was loaded with an old apple orchard. And he thought, well, how can I take my knowledge of distillery and use these apples and make something that's going to get people looped? And so he came up with that Applejack stuff. And they've been making it for 300 years, But the place is still there. You can go and have a tour. And there you go. But I'm telling you, everything good. Look, we got the blueberries that you eat down at your supermarket. They were developed right here in New Jersey in White Spot. I was just there last Saturday hanging out. And
you talk about those blueberries a lot. If you don't have a fridge full of them, I'm going to be disappointed.
You're going to be real disappointed. I hate blueberries.
Well, as much as you seem to talk about them, the blueberries here in Jersey. Okay. Yeah,
but it's also it's also
the blueberries in Jersey.
No, but it's also the best tomatoes in the country, the best corn in the country. These are just facts. I mean,
Iowa's going to want to argue with you on the
Iowa.
Nebraska too.
They produce a lot of corn there, but it's not good stuff. It's not super sweet like we got here. Listen, my very first job, I was 14 years old, and I spent that summer shucking corn. Well, actually not shucking corn, but picking corn. Because
back then it was called maize.
Yes, and we used to take it, and we used to take fish and wrap it around the roots of the plants to make them grow better. But you'd walk down the aisles behind a big old tractor, and you just keep pulling the corn and tossing it to your left or right, and it'd hopefully go into the wagon. There was no mechanical harvesting or anything like that. And man, it would be 95 degrees and sweating like a son of a gun, high humidity, and you're in between the corn rows. I was a scrawny little kid, and I probably lost 10 pounds a day doing that stuff. But it paid $1.06 an hour. So there you go. Can you
Nice.
imagine that? I work all week and I get a check at the end of the week for like $23 or something.
Well, no, and say you did that when you were young, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember if I remember correctly, I was reading something the other day. I think it was 1920 when they finally passed a law saying that children were not allowed to go and work in the coal mines because
Yeah.
everybody's seen those photographs, right, of the kids,
Yeah. All
you
covered
know,
in soot.
probably, yeah, covered in soot and coal dust from like, I don't know, I want to say age 6
Yeah.
and up, right? But listen, the most popular downloaded children's game
Hmm.
is Minecraft.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for that. It's because these children, they yearn for those mines. We have to start sending them back.
I think we need to. We need to. My grandfather on Halloween of 1929 died in a coal mine, collapsed right on him.
Ah,
I wasn't around, of course. And unfortunately,
yeah, sure.
my father was only a year and a half old at the time, so that kind of sucked. But
Yeah.
and they used to always they would do an investigation, but because even back then there were regulations and you had to blame it on somebody or something, and they blamed it on my grandfather, of course. And so I did some research, and between 1928 and 1937, not one company was ever blamed for a coal mine. It was always minor error, which I find fascinating. But but then I guess you didn't have to pay out anything. So, but I
Yeah.
digress. It's one of those days.
It is one of those days. It's Friday.
It
We
is
don't
right.
have it. The funny thing is, we never have anything planned for the show. I
No.
get like a random idea. So, we just kind of wing it. It's funny though. I was trying to figure out where I'm spending most of my time because yesterday or day before yesterday didn't have any Wi-Fi going on for the like
Mhm.
whole neighborhood for 20 hours, and I was trying to figure out where I've been spending the majority of my time. So I had this little legal pad over here, and I was just writing down, okay, I'm doing this usually in these hours and this and here, and I realized I go to my parish a lot, even though it's a 35-40 minute drive. I'm
It's
at
good.
my
Huh?
church a lot, and I'm doing a lot there.
Mhm.
And it got me thinking about how some people, I'm blessed to have the wife that I have because my wife is like 100% supportive of me going and helping out at the church because I'm not just
Mhm.
always there doing nothing here.
Yeah.
I help take care of her, the kids, all that other. I help out. I'm the what is that? The beta male because oh my gosh, he washed dishes and he loaded the laundry and he folded the laundry and all that other. But I've seen some examples of really bad marriages
Mhm.
where, when I say really bad, I don't mean like they're beating the crap out of each other, but I mean
No.
where they've got their priorities wrong, right? It's always it's always with people who have like this martyr complex
Sure.
where they feel like they aren't appreciated enough or their efforts aren't recognized enough. And I'm not saying they aren't, but that progresses into where everything is a problem.
Mm.
And I've seen so many people arguing, like, okay, well, who would you prioritize if your mom called and said she needed $100, or if
Mhm.
your wife called and said she needed $100 and it was for the exact same issue? Who would you prioritize there? Like, well, my wife, you know. Well,
Yeah.
what if the church needed 100 and your wife needed 100 and it was for the exact same
The
reason?
church.
It's going to the church. Yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason people really struggle
Of
with
course.
aligning these priorities. You know, you make they make their kids a priority over their spouse, or they make their spouse or their mother a priority over their spouse, or they make their spouse a priority over God. If you line things up correctly, God, spouse, kids, and then everyone else in that order, things tend to just work out automatically.
Sure.
And you don't even have to try that hard as long as you maintain the priority in that matter. Now, obviously, there's going to be some issues where a sick child or a sick spouse has to take priority because these are extraordinary circumstances. But you wouldn't believe the amount of upset, or maybe you would, I don't know, the amount of upset and unrest it causes when you vocally state, I prioritize God, then my wife comes second, then my kids come third, and then everyone else comes in fourth position equally, including myself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People lose their minds. I can't believe you would choose your wife over your mom. Well, yeah, that's kind of how you're supposed to do it. If it's your wife, well, it's not even a good Christian. You're supposed to honor your mother and father. Okay, but you conveniently skipped over the part where you'll leave your mother, cling to your wife, and become one flesh with her.
Ephesians.
Hey, look at that. A Catholic that knows scripture. You're a rare breed over there, Ed. Jeez. Quit showing off. You know, most of us Catholics, you know, you're special because most of us Catholics, we can barely spell Bible.
Exactly.
We don't know
3
anything
I
about
believe
it.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's what we're told on X all the time. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you know, as I just recently found out, Jeff, you know, Catholics, we are not even allowed to own Bibles. Did you know that? This is I'm glad I found that out, but and
Yeah, that's
luckily
why I've been working. That's why I'm sweating right now. I've been outside digging tunnels to my secret Catholic chamber. So in case
exactly.
the church comes by to inspect my house, they don't find my Bible.
Exactly. When the Knights Templar come knocking on your door asking if you have any Bibles, you can tell them no.
Right.
But
Yeah, 100%. But no, I mean, look, it should be straightforward. God needs to take number one priority in your life. If that happens, all the other stuff works out the way it should. Right.
Absolutely.
But what and I think I'm on this topic today because a buddy of mine, and I've mentioned him on the show before. He's the godfather of my children. He's a former family therapist, and he specializes in attachment theory and focuses mainly on relationship issues. And yeah, there's a lot of problems with when it comes to attachment because you have disordered attachment, which is what you would consider anxious and avoidant. Then you have anxious attachment. Then you have avoidant attachment. And anxious attachment people tend to become people pleasers. And then avoidant people always kind of have that one foot out the door, like a backup plan, or I can't get too close or let any other people get too close.
Yeah.
And then you're pretty much your own worst enemy if you're anxious avoidant. You'll sabotage because you feel things aren't going to work out, even if they're great. But a lot of it just comes down to not feeling prioritized or you yourself having your priorities out of order. Right? Things fall apart. It's just a simple order of operations. You know, it's like you go to change a tire. Well, you don't take the lug nuts off first. Right? You got to raise the car. Of course, yeah, okay. Yeah, you loosen the lug nuts and then you jack it up. But it's a simple order of operations if you want things to work out. And it's the same thing with your priorities. You want things to work, make God number one in your life.
Yep.
Make your spouse, whether it's your husband, whether it's your wife, make them number two. Your kids are number three. And sometimes that makes people lose their minds. Like, who would you choose between choosing your child or choosing your spouse?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, does my wife want me to stay home and not take my kid to a cancer operation? Or is it just simply a list of priority as far as like whose needs am I looking after? If all needs being the same, who do I look whose needs do I look after first? Well, then it's my wife, right? And it's weird how if you put those three things in order, God, spouse, kids,
Mhm.
you're automatically taking care of yourself while taking care of those things, because your life gets easier when you have those priorities in the correct order.
Yeah.
And you're giving them the due attention they deserve. One of the things that I struggled with early on in my marriage, and when I say early on, I'm talking early 2000s. I'm going to say 2005, 2006, was not, well, number one, I wasn't even a Christian then, right?
Mm.
But if we, for the sake of this story, we take God completely off the table. I've got my wife and kids being the people that I need to prioritize. I was struggling with helping myself because I'm still young and stupid, prioritizing my kids over my wife because you've got this cultural pressure to do that. You should always put your kids first. Kids are
Sure.
your life. And I'm a new dad. And, you know, as a new dad, you've got this dopamine thing going on where it's like, I'm so in love with these little humans that I would burn down the world for them if I needed to, you know, and that's understandable when you look at your kid and your kid's a little piece of you, right? And then that caused problems between me and my wife because I would neglect her. Or then it would end up causing problems between me and my wife when I overdid it by neglecting spending time with my kids to just spend time with her. And I would put off things or cancel things or even sometimes forget things. So it was a really hard way to try to balance everything
Oh, sure.
because no one's perfect when they first get into a relationship or when they first have a family. Or maybe I'm just that terrible of a human being and I screwed it all up and no one else did. I don't know. I haven't met everyone else. Maybe it's understandable. Maybe it's not. I don't know what the listeners think. But it was difficult. And it's something that I struggled with for a couple of decades. You know, short amount of time on the grand scheme of things. About a decade and a half, I guess. But when I finally got it figured out, the only missing piece was God. And it's crazy that ever since I came to the church, well, not even came into the church, but just came to the church. So a little over a year and a half ago now, life just got easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that I haven't had any stresses, I haven't had any anxieties, I haven't had any, you know, problems or complications pop up, but just life in general. If I look back over it, has gotten really friggin' easy because I'm following the proper order of operations.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I was thinking about this morning while I was out trying to find more coyotes to shoot.
Yeah, well, you know, and you make the point there about not only, I mean, okay, if you were to say you need to prioritize and put God first, okay, that would be a true statement. But then I'm glad you went further and said when you do that, everything else pretty much falls into place. You know, God knows what he's doing. He created this system for a reason. And but why do we have the problems that we have today? Because we have a new order that most people follow. It's I'm number one priority. There's a huge gap. And then there's other people in my life. And even those they don't put in the correct order. And God is somewhere way down the list if he's on the list at all. But see, I think this is why we have the world we have today, is because I'm number one priority and everyone else needs to get in line. And if I if I feel generous today, I'll put you on my list, and you'll benefit from that. So, but you're right. If you put God at the top of that list, then spouse, then children, uh, extended family, community, blah blah blah, all the way down the line. Things are going to fall into place and they're going to work out. I mean, look at Jesus. When he was, you know, when people were starting to follow him, and this one dude says, "Hey, I'll be right there. I just got to bury my dad." And what does Jesus say? Let the dead bury the dead. You either come now or don't bother. And it seems harsh to hear those words, but it's true. Where are your priorities? And God's got to be number one, regardless of what's going on in your life, regardless of what's happening. And if you do that,
Yeah.
you will, but if you, the thing is, it's not like a mean thing or anything like that, because as you mentioned, if you do it that way, you will realize as you go along, okay, this makes sense now. This is working out. Everything else is falling into place because I decided to prioritize God. And like I said, I mean, God knows what he's doing. He put this system in place because he's God. I don't want the world following my system. I want the world following God's system.
Well, it's like this. I prioritize God. That helps me become the kind of man and husband and father that my wife
Right.
and children need. When that happens, I can devote more attention and effort into the relationship with my wife because I'm becoming a better person. When
Yeah.
that happens, it strengthens our relationship, which when that happens, my wife and I have more positive interaction than we have negative, almost to the point where it ends up where we have nothing but positive interaction.
Yeah.
Which has been the case for me. And then my kids see that. And so when there's no tension between me and my wife, because I'm not being the kind of man that I need to be, that reflects onto my children, which then my children see that. And then there's no, do I need to try to manipulate and navigate this minefield with my wife? There's none of that necessary. And I can focus proper attention onto being a good father.
Yeah.
And so everything just lines up the way it should.
Yeah, it does. It's like
I saw a clip.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's like, we have that organization in a lot of parishes around here. My parish was the first one in New Jersey to put it in place, was that organization called That Man Is You. And we meet on Saturday mornings. We meet at 6:00 in the morning, which it seems crazy, but the whole purpose is that you're going to get your dose of God. You're going to get your dose of what it is to be a good Catholic man. And then by the time you get home, the family's just waking up, and you can be the good husband, the good father, the good, whatever you need to be that day. But you put the priorities in the right place. You put God first. You went there, you learned from your session that day how to be a good Catholic man, and then you take that home with you. So that's what just going to be my point, is that it's like, if anyone who's out there and you're listening, if your parish or a parish near you has That Man Is You, I'd recommend you sign up. You will learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about how being a good Catholic man makes you a better husband, a better father, a better son, better grandfather, better everything. It all falls into place from there. So, and it all stemmed from, like as you started out by saying, is that by putting God first. So,
yeah. I saw this clip, and I'm going to try not to go too deep into this rabbit hole here, but because I didn't watch the entire thing. But I saw a clip from the Democratic National Convention.
Oh boy.
And it was Tim Walz, and he was up there talking, and this is a man who he's an older guy. He's been around a while. He's done a lot. I mean, he's been a congressman. He's been a governor. He's currently the VP candidate. So he's done a good bit, right? And I'm not even going to go into the fact that he lied about his deployments and all that other, but he's still done a good bit. Even with that, even if he had never done any of that, becoming a congressman, I don't know if he was a congressman or a senator. I don't know or care. One of those things.
Yeah.
And then a governor, and now the VP candidate. If you look at those things just in a vacuum, He's done a lot of things that if anybody else had done, it would be something to say, hey, I'm kind of proud of these accomplishments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he said, my greatest accomplishment is my family. Now, I can't, and won't ever support his politics.
Sure.
Right. But the camera panned over and you see his family up there and his daughter's up there making the little heart hands, and his son, who I believe has some learning disabilities. He's on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
He's crying and he's like, that's my dad. That's my dad. He's very proud of his father.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And look, it's not hard to look at someone else and see that even if you don't agree with their politics, their kids or their spouse loves them, looks up to them, respects them. And he clearly has that from his family.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't want him anywhere near my family and children, because I would not like him to be able to influence them with his political ideologies.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want him in office in my state no more than I want Lindsey Graham in my office. Gosh, can we please get rid of this guy? I'm so tired of that tiddlywinks prick. Anyway. But the point I'm saying is, he said, my greatest accomplishment is my family. Yeah. Now, he's on the right track with that point of view, because even if you don't agree with someone's politics, they can still be a good husband to their wife. They can still be a good father to their children, even if they're missing some key elements about, I don't know, being a good, strong Catholic. Right?
Yeah.
But he does seem to have that part lined in. His family loves him. He loves them. And I'm not even going to get into him pulling on his son, so his son didn't walk straight into the teleprompter stand. I mean,
yeah,
it was obviously right there in front of him. That's a big nothing burger people are talking about.
Exactly.
But there's no greater feeling than probably what Tim Waltz experienced when he was up on that stage and his son in tears. That's my dad.
Yeah.
You know how awesome it feels. You felt this. At least I hope you have. We haven't had this discussion. But when your son or your daughter or your wife tells you that they are so proud of you,
yeah,
you have to have had done something right and been doing it right for a while for that to happen. I have zero doubts that Tim Waltz is a good husband to his wife. I have zero doubts that he's a good father to his children.
Yeah.
Now, I say that as far as leading his children to God off the table, right? Yeah. But from a strictly secular perspective, he's probably a good husband and a good father. And if the evidence is clear on screen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are on the path of strengthening their roles as men, as husbands, as fathers. And that's great. But it's always going to end up being an uphill battle. It's always going to be harder than it needs to be without you first strengthening your relationship with God. Right? Because we look at his daughter, she's definitely far left politically, same as him, right? There's obviously some woke ideology very prevalent, but again, he's good to them in the secular sense. So that's a completely separate thing than what I'm talking about. In a fullness of what it means to be a good husband and a good father is to keep your wife and your children out of the gates of hell.
Yeah.
Becoming a good father and becoming a good man and becoming a good husband to the point where your wife and your children can, without any kind of trepidation or hesitation, say, I am so proud of you as my husband, as my dad, as a man, it becomes so much easier when you place God at the top of your priorities and you start there to build the strongest foundation possible. Will it be 100% easy all the time? Hell no. Will it be easier? Yes, it will. Because look, I've talked about it on my timeline before, where I was the one that decided, guess what, guys? You're all Catholic now. We're going to church.
Mhm.
That's literally how it happened. We didn't go to mass, come home, and then everything was, as it is today. But the church and devoting and just watching me devote my life to God from that instant eventually had this bleeding effect into my family. And it's kind of like, well, if you're suffering with depression, you're suffering successfully, you're, as far as professionalism or your professional life or in your relationship, and then you look at you and you're kind of overweight, you're lazy, and then you start going to the gym and your mindset changes and you start feeling better about yourself, standing a little taller, doing more, getting into shape. That has a bleeding effect into the other areas of your life as well. You're more positive, you're more active, you're spending more time with your wife and your kids. That one little change bleeds over into your life. It's the same concept when you prioritize, when God's the number one thing, you start becoming the kind of man that your children want as a father and that your wife needs as a husband. But people have priorities all screwed up because we live in this hyper hedonistic and hyper nihilistic society where everybody just wants that instant satisfaction. If it makes me feel good, I'll feel better. And then everybody else should just get on the train with me. That's not how it works. Because sometimes you have to, at least in my experience, you have to feel really bad when you're fixing you, right? Because you got to burn down some of the old decaying, rotten pieces of you.
Yeah. But this is also why it's so critical to, and we've said it a million times already today, about from the man's perspective, of putting God first. Because the thing of it is, there are people in your life, and children are at the top of that list, that are going to look up to you and going to admire you and going to a certain extent want to be like you, simply because you are their father and because you are the only adult male they've ever known. So, that's why it's so critical that you've got God in your life and you've got him in the right place in your life. Because, and I see this, I watch my share of daytime television and stuff, and you see like the Dr. Phil shows and things like that, where there'll be a family on there where the guy is a bum. He skips out on the family for periods of time. He doesn't take care of them financially. He's, maybe he's had affairs and things like that. And there's the teenage daughter there. And, and when asked about, what are your feelings about your dad? They say, I love him. He's my dad. So you're going to get that admiration. You're going to get these little ones looking up to you, regardless of what a bum you are. So that's why it's so critical that you make yourself into the best possible person you can be. Don't just, because it's so easy to fall back on it and say, well, my kids love me anyway. My family loves me anyway. I'm a big screw up, but who cares? You can't have that attitude. And you can't, and look, you mentioned this Tim Waltz, and yeah, he might be, by today's standard, by this world standard, by this country standard, he might be a great dad. And his children do look up to him, as you mentioned. But this is also a guy who signs legislation that allows abortion up till birth in his state. This is a guy who, on his watch, eight babies who have survived abortion have died on the table because he signed legislation that allows them to be left to die. you know? So, okay, he's got children looking up to him. In my mind, he's a heartless thug. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
Right.
And that's just the tip of the
But that's
iceberg.
but
There's
that's
so
what
much.
it comes down to. Listen, with he's good to his wife, he's good to his kids
He is, but
from
there's
a
so much more
secular
from a secular perspective.
perspective.
Yeah.
Now, my wife, my children were never in like the woke minded weirdo crap. So this is kind of a moot thing.
Yeah.
But look at it from this perspective. If say like Rob Schneider's daughter, she recently came out and said he was so mean to me because he sent me to fat camp.
Yeah.
That sounds like love to me because I would rather you be healthy.
Yeah.
Is it a little harsh? Maybe, maybe not. But you don't do anyone any favors when you indulge them in the things that only make them happy if it's not in their best interest long term.
Mhm.
So just trying to be your wife's buddy or your children's buddy, yeah, that might make them like you, but you're doing them a disservice
Absolutely.
because they're
Tim,
only
I'm
going to
sure.
like you because they're only going to like you short term. There's plenty of times when my kids have not liked me, especially when it's like, "Oh, guess what? You have to get up extra early because we have a special mass this morning. Can I just sleep?" No. Get up. They don't like me. But guess what? It's good for them long term. And now, as they've come to realize that coming into the fullness of the church, they
Mm,
go, I see why dad wanted me to do that because they understand the concept.
yeah.
So, yeah, Tim Walsh's kids love him. His wife loves him. And maybe if he turns around and says, listen, guys, we got to change all this
Yeah.
and says, we're going to have to change everything. We're going to sacrifice everything that we've built and we're going to lose this platform and we're going to lose this status and stature that we have. We're going to lose voters and constituents because we're all going to join the Catholic Church. We're all going to oppose abortion. We're
Yeah.
all going to do this because this is what is right and this is what is just and this is what God wants from us.
Yeah.
Instantly, his 3 family members are going to be like, I hate you. You're a monster. Da 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 da. So it's
Yeah.
going to be instantly hard right away. Guess what?
Yeah.
He's doing it for them out of love. And with enough time, with enough effort, with enough prayer, it will come around and they'll love him for it. And it will not just be he's a good father, he's a good husband in the secular sense. It will
Yeah.
be he's a good father, he's a good husband in the fullness of the sense of what that means.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, you look at
But
the
it has to
numbers.
start with him prioritizing God first,
It
and
does.
then prioritizing his wife, bringing her to the church, and then
Yeah.
prioritizing his children, bringing them into the church.
You
And
look at the numbers.
it's gonna be rough, but once you
Yeah.
make it past that little demarcation line, once you cross that Rubicon,
Yeah.
it gets easier.
It does. But and you look at the numbers and it shows like, if mom and dad don't go to church, you got like a 0% chance that your kids are going to grow up and go to church. If mom goes to church, there's something like a 20 to 30% chance that the kids will grow up and go to church.
Yeah, it's
If
like
dad
27 something.
is that what it is? If your dad goes to church, I think it
It's like
bumps up. Well,
93%.
exactly. It's crazy. And the proof is there. I mean, you look at stories of like Saint Teresa, the Little Flower. She talks about why she pursued the life that she did. And when she was a little girl and she went to church with her parents, who I believe both her parents are saints, right? Um, but she would be
Believe so.
sitting there. Yeah, she'd be sitting there in church, or I should say kneeling at this point, because during she remembers very vividly during the consecration turning towards her parents and seeing tears come down her father's out of his eyes and streaming down his cheeks during the consecration. And she thought to herself, I've never seen my father cry. I've never seen my father in a moment of weakness. I've never seen this amount of emotion from my father. There is something incredible happening here. There's something special, something that needs to always be a part of my life. And that kind of led her towards the path that she took of becoming a sister. But it was because of the example of her father and his love of Christ and his love of the church. So that's what did it for her. That's why, I mean, she was considering these things that pushed her over the top. It was the father. So as fathers, you have to understand the impression that you're making on your kids, and it's the old cliches, but you look back and the whole thing of dad sitting there with his cigarette in one hand and a can of bud in the other, and he's telling you don't drink and don't smoke, and you're like, okay, yeah, whatever, dad, but there's something to be said for that, is that if your kids see you getting up on Sunday like you do, and going to church, if they see you get up on Saturday and going to church to fix pews and things of that nature, that's going to stick with them. And yeah, they're going to go through those years where they're like, I don't need God, I don't need the church. What dad's doing is ridiculous. At some point, if you continue, they're going to come back around, and they're going to realize, oh, you know what? Even though I gave it up, and even though I thought it was ridiculous and I told him so, dad's still getting up on Sunday and going to church. Dad's still getting up on Saturday and going and helping out at the church. He's still got that men's group going on. Like, maybe I need to rethink this. And then, as a young adult or whatever, these kids come back. But if at any point you drop the ball and you say, well, it hasn't worked, so I'm just going to stop. Well, that's what's going to happen with your kids. They're going to stop as well. You think about St. Augustine and his mom, St. Monica. And how many years did she pray for him to straighten his act up? And he kept saying, well, Lord, make me chaste, just not now. I mean,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
One of my favorite stories.
Praying. It's a great story, but she kept praying. She kept praying. She kept praying. You know this, Jeff. You're never going to not be a dad. It doesn't matter. Your kids could be 50, 60, 70. You're still a dad. You still have responsibilities towards them. You still have that goal and that job of getting them to heaven. That doesn't ever go away. So. Yeah, it's an awesome responsibility. I think more men need to take it seriously. I mean, they worry about, oh, I'm going to get my kid a car when they're 16. I'm going to take the whole family to Bermuda next summer. We're moving into a bigger house. That's all wonderful. It's all great. But if God's not a part of that, it's all ridiculous. I tell people all the time, I've never seen a funeral yet where there was a U-Haul attached to the back of the hearse. All that stuff stays here. And where you end up has to do with how you live your life and what you've done for the people that you were put in charge of. And make no mistake, when God puts children in your life, that's a massive responsibility, not just from the secular point of view, you have to make sure they're fed and they're clothed and they're educated, but you have to make sure that they know God. That's first and foremost,
Right. It's very simple.
Yeah, should be.
Should be
simple in theory.
What's the old thing? It's simple, not easy.
Right. Yeah, that's what I remember. It always strikes me. There was I was in a life of the Spirit seminar, and this one guy was just like almost kind of chuckling through some of the stuff we're doing, and some of the discussions we're having. I was like, dude, what's up with you? And he's like, being Catholic's like the easiest thing ever. And I said, dude, I don't think you're doing it right.
Okay.
All right there, buddy. I'm glad you signed up. But yeah, if you think any of this is easy, if you think being a father is easy, if you think being a Catholic father is easy, you missed a couple chapters in the book. I'm telling you. I mean, there are moments where it is wonderful.
What exactly are you looking at? Because I'm not seeing this easy part. Did you read something I didn't?
Is that in the preface? Is that in where is that? Yeah. Is it? It's in the prologue. I don't know.
Is there like a cheat code in the back? Is it written in the margins? I don't know.
Catholic Fathers for Dummies. I think they flipped through it, but it's just it's amazing. No,
just a be good dude.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the thing. Like if you were reading the chapter that said be your kid's best friend, you got the wrong book.
Yeah, like I don't even like my kids enough to be their friend. Oh,
That drives me crazy. Oh, me and my dad and I are best friends. My mom and I are best friends. No, you're not.
you should not be your child's
You're not.
friend until they're old enough to drink.
Yeah, and even then, it's still they're
And
still
even then, you be a good friend when that means telling them when they're screwing up.
exactly not like, hey, let's go party. I mean,
I
there's a
mean,
couple I know that they did that exact thing. They were the cool parents when their kids got into high school. They would let their kids have their friends over and have beers and stuff like that. And then when their kids uh, got out of college and were back home, they'd go out to clubs with them. And everything. I'm like, no, you don't go clubbing with your kid. You know,
that's
having their
weird.
having her apple teenies and stuff, and they posting the pictures on Facebook. Hey, we're all best buddies. No, you're not best buddies. You're a parent. Be
I
one.
remember when my 21-year-old was getting ready to ship off to basic training. So
Yeah.
this is 3 years ago now.
Mm.
And we sat out on the patio. We had a giant fire pit going. He had a cigar that I bought for him,
Mhm.
and he had some scotch. So
Nice.
me and him sat there around the fire pit, smoking cigars, drinking scotch. Little kids were out there enjoying roasting marshmallows and making s'mores and all this other stuff. And that was pretty much the limit of me being the cool dad, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Other than that, like my 18-year-old just turned 18 like 9 days ago.
nice.
And prior to that, he's like, "Dad, I want to get a tattoo." I mean, I can't say don't get a tattoo, right?
Yeah.
I'm a walking billboard for tattoo artists.
Mhm.
But I said, "Okay, when you get 18, you can go get a tattoo. It's only in a few weeks, and if you sign,
Mm.
it'll be allowed." Yeah, well, I'm not going to do that. Why not? Because I'm not going to do that. That's the reason why. You want to
Yeah.
do an adult thing, you're going to be an adult, you know. Well, I'm not going to say his name out loud for operational security purposes because he is in this.
Exactly.
No, because he is in a special forces unit. But
Oh
you
boy.
let insert son's name uh, have a cigar and scotch before he shipped out. Okay, there's important context there. He's
Sure.
leaving and he hasn't been back home for more than like a few days at a time in the entire last 3 years. It's an important milestone where he's enlisting. He's going to serve his country on a 8-year contract,
Wow.
and he's not going to be home for a while. And he's going to be jumping out of planes. He's going to be in combat zones. You are going to be working at a job less than 10 miles away, still
Mm.
living at home. And he was 18 when that happened. You are not 18 yet.
Mhm.
So, two very important distinctive pieces of context. He didn't like it very much. Well, he turned 18, like I said, 9 days ago. And guess what?
No
I don't know
tattoo.
if I want a tattoo right now.
I figured.
See? See?
Dad
I
knows.
didn't do the Yeah, now you didn't go and get something that was stupid and that you regret doing and blow $500 on a tattoo
Yeah.
that you can now put towards fixing up that old car that's out there in the driveway.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess you're right. See? Stop being the cool parent. It's okay for them to be mad at you and not want to talk to you for 9 days because they might change their mind because children, everyone listening, lean in real close to your speakers or turn the volume up because you need to understand this. Children are stupid.
There you go.
They don't know what they want. When you were a child, you were stupid. That's kind of how it works.
That's how it works. Listen, you can be the cool parent, but as long as while you're being a cool parent, you're saving up for your kids' therapy in 15 years because
Yeah.
they're gonna
Yeah,
need
those
it.
2
You know what I
things go
mean?
hand in hand. You gotta save
Yeah.
you could be the cool parent, but just make sure you put back money for therapy, rehab and bail.
Exactly. And bail. Yes. Yeah.
Right. And lawyer fees.
It adds up. I'm telling you, it adds up.
Yeah. So, yeah, do your thing. All right. We're about 9 minutes left in the show. So what'd you bring, Ed? You said you were going to bring something, and we
I
did get
always
an
say
opportunity yesterday because we lost track of time.
we did.
And prior to that, had to cancel 2 shows. So,
Yeah. It's crazy. I still get paid for those days, right?
yeah. It's you're on
Okay.
salary. It's the
All
same.
right, cool. I figured. I just want to make sure. So back in the early 30s in Fort Wayne, Indiana, there were 2 Catholic high schools. There was a boys' Catholic high school called Central Catholic. There was a girls' Catholic high school called St. Augustine Academy. In 1938, they combined the two to a co-ed Catholic high school, just simply called Central Catholic High School. And they were taught there by diocesan priests and also sisters from 3 different orders. There was the Sisters of Providence, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, and the Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ. And the nickname for this school, their sports teams were the Fighting Irish. Seems appropriate, being in Fort Wayne, Indiana, not too far from Notre Dame. But this school very quickly became very popular. They got up very quickly to about 1,400 students. Sports teams were amazing. In fact, in 1939 and 1940, the boys basketball team won state and national championships. 1950, the football team won state championship. There's an interesting little asterisk on those because these were state championships that came without playing any public schools, because in the 30s and into the 40s in Indiana, the KKK was so active there and in state government that Catholic schools were not allowed to participate in state tournaments. So that you have to, roll that into the whole mix. But this school was very successful, but its success wound up creating its downfall because they were in the center of town. So they had no place to expand. And as they got to be very popular, the bishop there decided we need more Catholic high schools. So they built 2 large Catholic high schools on the outskirts of Fort Wayne. And as those 2 schools opened their doors, more and more families left Central Catholic and went to these additional schools. So by 1972, enrollment was so far down that they had to close the school. And the reason I talk about Central Catholic in Fort Wayne, Indiana, is because it mentioned in 1950, their football team were undefeated, 12-0, and state champs. And what I brought for us today was their gymnasium banner from 1950, which shows you all their victories of the year of 1950. So it's a silk banner with felt lettering, and you see some of them. I mean, they were just lambasting people, and I love these kind of things. This thing is so cool. Undefeated, united, untied, state champs, whopping some good schools there. So this is how old is this? 74 years old then, this banner. So it's not quite as old as me, but it's getting there. But this is so from Central Catholic High School in 1950. There you go. You're undefeated, Fighting Irish. And that's what we have here today, Jeff. Because you know me, I love the history of everything Catholic, and that includes athletics.
The undefeated Fighting Irish. It doesn't
the
apply
undefeated
to
Fighting Irish.
it doesn't apply to these guys, though.
No? Oh, not those guys. No. See, there you go. But when I was in high school, my senior year of high school, my Catholic high school, we won the state championship in boys basketball. And then after I had graduated, they started up a tournament of champions, because it used to be there would be sectional champions in New Jersey, and they didn't have like one overall champion. And so they started this tournament called a Tournament of Champions, where it was a brand new tournament where all the regional state champs got together. And to this very day, my high school is the only high school that the boys and girls won the state tournament of championship in the same year. So we had the best boys team and the best girls team in the state in the same year. It was in, I don't remember, it was in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So obviously I was long gone at that point. But yeah, very exciting times. So Catholic, I thought that was crazy. The whole part about like even in the 30s and 40s, the KKK had that kind of a sway where they were holding down Catholic schools from participating in state tournaments. That's insane. But what are you gonna do?
Cool, though.
Yeah, but I love those banners. I love when you go in an old high school and they've got those banners hanging up. It's so cool. And
yeah, those are kind of neat.
They are neat. And that's why I told you about it. Like I was on the website because the Fort Wayne diocese has a museum, and I was flipping through their website and I saw a picture of my banner on their website. They're celebrating this team, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. So I sent an email to the curator of the museum there. I said, do you still have the banner? I hope you do, because if you don't, it's sitting in my kitchen. And she said, oh, no, we still have ours. There were a handful of duplicates that were made at the time that they would hang in different areas of the school. So I apparently wound up with one of those. So there wasn't just one. There was about a half dozen of them. And one of them made it to good old Hamilton, New Jersey. How? I don't know. But it's in the archives, and we love it because it's Catholic and it's cool.
That's what kind of matters, right?
It's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you get stuff, just that you have it. But yeah, I don't know what's like in South Carolina. In New Jersey, I mean, every year the top 5 or 6 basketball teams are Catholic. The top 5 or 6 football teams are Catholic. It's because they listen, I know you're not supposed to, but they honestly kind of recruit basically the Catholic schools around here. It's huge. And like any of the major college football teams that you look at, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, all those, their rosters are full of little Catholic boys in New Jersey.
Yeah. One of the schools here plays Don Bosco up there in Jersey.
Don Bosco, yeah. That's one of our big ones, yeah.
Yeah, one of the school districts here, one of the high schools, they travel up there and play them at least, I think, every year, to be honest with you, because it's 5A. It's 5A football.
Yeah.
It's the big boys. It's not.
It's huge.
It's not like, oh, this is just 2A football or 3. No, this is 5A ball where
it's big.
They expect results. But that's the thing, like whenever I lived out in New Mexico or Texas or here in South Carolina, football's kind of like a religion of its own. Like where I live now, it's Gamecocks or Clemson.
Yeah.
Right. Out in East New Mexico / West Texas, you're Longhorns or Aggies fan. In New Mexico, it was kind of looped in because no one gives a crap about A&M or the Lobos, or not A&M, the Aggies or the Lobos. It was Texas A&M or the Texas Longhorns. Because I used to go into the Battle of I-10 games when they would play in El Paso. So freaking cool. But man, Texas, South Carolina, football's a religion, at least between high school and college.
Yeah. You got that Red River rivalry with Texas and Oklahoma. I got a buddy who still goes to that every year.
Oh, yeah. But as far as like the way the states are divided, it's South Carolina, you've got Clemson and the Gamecocks. Texas, you've got the Aggies, not the Texas A&M and the Longhorns.
Look, but you still got other good teams. You got Baylor, and you've got Texas,
but I'm talking as far as like what gets the most attention. It's always going to be those because it's it's on the road rivalries.
Yeah.
Priorities, though, right?
Priorities. It's all about priorities.
It's all about it. But all right, that's going to wrap it for the last show of the week. You all have a great weekend, and thanks for watching, listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing, and forcing this positive Catholic message down the throats of all the anti-Catholic people in your life.
God bless you, everybody.